Welcome.
Thank you so much for coming tonight, and thank you for having me, Sarah. Yeah, when we were talking about and laughing about really doing this anxiety regulation curve with people, and I'm like, well, let me tell you how Diet Coke saved my relationship with my daughter. And how would we know that that would become the title? The information that I'm giving you today comes from a woman named Carrie, or two women, Carrie Dunbarone and Mitzi Curtis's work. They've been in the field for many, many years, and they started something called the 5-point scale. And what I am doing is based on their 5-point scale, where 1 is where you're calm and relaxed, 2, you're feeling okay, you're a little nervous at 3, you're getting angry at 4, and 5, you have exploded. And what we can do to help our children or students when they are at 2, 3, and 4, it's pretty easy to identify when our young learners are at a 1, and it's extremely obvious to everyone when they're at a 5. It's these magical areas where the teaching can occur. But the secret twist is this isn't just about your young learner, it's also about you, because there are 2 curves that we're going to be talking about tonight. One is an adult curve where I found that Diet Coke saved my life. And the second one is your child or your student, your little learner. Can I ask real quick, what the makeup of our audience is? Are we teachers, parents, both, daycare providers? Just a quick rundown in the chat room, maybe. Tell me what your purpose for being here is, what professional or personal hat you're wearing, so I can kind of know what's going through your minds as we're going through all of this. And I hope that you got the handouts in advance that were emailed out, because we're going to be referencing those. I'm a seasoned learner, so I kind of need my paper copies. But if you prefer digital copies, pull up your digital copy, your paper copy, whatever you want to take notes on, because it's a very hands-on kind of process we're going to go through today. So with that, I just want to start with this great quote. Sarah, can you read that for us?
I sure can. When little people are overwhelmed by big emotions, it's our job to share our calm, not join their chaos.
And I just think, isn't that a lovely thing to strive for? I'm a parent and I am a professional, and it is not easy to not join the chaos. But it is the ultimate goal for us as parents and teachers to share our calm. I have to just say, my son will be 30 in May, and my daughter will be 26 tomorrow. And they were where I learned like the ins and outs of parenting, but I have been a speech language pathologist in the district for 26 years, working primarily with ages birth to 3 and a little bit birth to 5. So that's a little bit about my background. So this anxiety curve, and Mitzi and I can't always forget that. Carrie and Mitzi both called it the anxiety curve, so that's what I call it because it's their trademarked name. But I think of it really as a regulation curve, and that's what we're going to go over. Remember, calm, getting a little nervous, ooh, kind of shaky. I'm gonna blow a gasket, and I am fully out of my mind. I can no longer think straight. But there's the other side to that curve, and that is going back down to calm. And what we can do as parents and adults here as we're coming back down. Oh, yes, you can. I bet Sarah can put that into an email right now or even in the chat box and
I
download it
sure
for you.
can. Let me just take a few minutes and I'll pull it up and I'll send it your way.
This is the other curve we're going to be talking about because it's just as important as your child's curve. However, you adults, we don't get to go over a 1.5 or a 2. So our curve isn't going to go all the way up because we can't join their chaos if we're going to help them learn how to calm. So our adults, as an adult, we have to stay down here. Does that make sense? Okay. So I want to share with you how we're going to make sure that we as adults stay down here. And that's going to be the first part of our conversation, because I want you to start to be really thinking about your triggers, your own calming, and your own strategies. So let's think for a minute. Take a look. What do you look like when you're at a 1? And I want you to write that down. And what do you look like when you're at a 5? Those 2 points, what I look like when I'm calm, chilled, relaxed, you can approach me with anything, it's pretty easy to identify. What is your breathing like? What is your body doing? What is your heart rate going at? What are your movements like? Versus what are you at when you are out of your mind? Don't approach me. Road rage. And I want you to think about, at a 1, what do you need to stay at a 1 or a 2? Or excuse me, at a 1. What do you need to stay there? Like, pretty much you're chill, anything can go maybe. But what about at a 5? What are you going to need to get back down? What is your one thing, no matter what, your go-to person, food, I'm sorry, it's food for me, person, food, activity, book, whatever it is that you need in order to start to calm yourself and your body down. And I wonder if there's anyone brave out there willing to put, what do you need? What's the one thing you need to bring yourself down? Because I will tell you, it's Diet Coke for me. Okay, Sarah, it's out. The secret, right? Nobody knew that about me at work. It's Diet Coke for whatever reason, and it's Diet Coke through a straw. I do not like to drink Diet Coke in a can. I prefer fountain Diet Coke. I'm very specific about my needs, and I like a straw. So I know in the moment, and so does my family, when I am probably at a 3, they start looking for the Diet Coke because they don't want me to get to a 5. But if I am there, there are certain things that I can do to help myself. Has anybody come up with things that help them in that moment of crisis, or is willing to share what you look like when you're at a 1 or a 5? Well, let me tell you what I look like. And you, I believe, all got this. But I am going to show you what I look like. When I'm at a 1, you know what? At a 1, I am pretty calm and relaxed. I am really quite chill. It's a typical day. I'm usually smiling, humming, singing, walking softly. I ask others about their day. I'm busy. I'm usually doing something, but I'm not quick and my movements are not fast paced. I bet she can, Gina. And you can even put it in the chat. They can download it from there. I know what some of my triggers are, some of the things that make me get anxious. The thing that gets me the most anxious is people not doing what they said they would do. Okay, my son saying he'd pick up his clothes and he didn't. Wait a minute, my husband saying he'd do the dishes and he didn't. Someone at work saying they would do a report and they didn't. If you tell me you're going to do something, I expect it to be done. because I know if I say I'm going to do it, I will get it done. So that's a little trigger, and I know that about myself. It's not always a pleasant thing, but it's true. It is what kind of bugs me and gets under my skin. Laziness, foul language, disrespectful attitude, like eye rolling from a teenager. Or, well, it was a double-edged sword the first time my daughter said to me, I hate you. She was 4. Part of me was like, oh, I'm doing a good job. I'm getting to her and maybe she's going to learn. And the other part of me was really, really sad because you just don't want to be hated by your child. But anyway, disrespectful attitude, incompetence when a person is really competent, but they just are feigning like they're not competent, and people who aren't willing to try, children, but mostly adults. So those are some of my triggers. When I am at a 1, my signs, I start to become pretty quick in my movements. My talk is fast-paced and kind of a little more clipped. Have you ever seen me like that, Sarah? Never. A little more fast, a little more clipped. I might start to listen to my music, and in the day it was my iPod, now it's my phone. And I will check out by starting to put my earbuds in. That's kind of what I look like when I am at a 2. What do I look like when I'm at a 3? Well, at a 3, I'm very agitated. I am starting to maybe toss things a little bit more than set them down. I'm starting to be a little more dismissive to people around me. And I'm more likely to use a loud voice. What do I look like? Oh, here I am. What do I look like when I'm at a 4? And what can be done? The difference between a 3 and a 4, for me personally, is how quickly I'm breathing and how fast I'm moving and how heavy my footsteps are. Boom, 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 up and down the stairs, or as I'm walking. It's a very distinct difference when I have moved from a 3 to a 4. And when I'm at a 4, there are different things you can do to help me. But when I'm at a 5, I'm a fight, flight, and flee kind of gal. We all are. And I don't fight. I'm not a yeller as a general rule, but I flee. I'm out of here, checking out, bye-bye. Now, that's not really the wisest coping strategy, I realize, especially when I decide to get in a car and get away from my family. And I'm that angry. But I usually go out and take a walk, not get in my car. But I'm a fleer. When I'm at a 5, I'm an explosion. I might be screaming, I might be stomping, I'm walking away, I'm slamming doors. Oh, I'm telling you all my horrible habits. And when I take off in the car for a drive, it's not a good thing. But that's what I look like when I am at a 5. All right, have you written down what you look like at a 1, 2, 3, and a 4, and a 5? It's really important for you to be identifying what you look like and how you're feeling, because that is going to help you really understand how to keep yourself at a 1 or a 2 for our students who are constantly, or our children who are constantly at a 5. When you start to feel that difference in your body, that tension, the footfalls, the breathing, whatever it is, that's when you need to start doing some things and finding some strategies to keep you down here at a 1 and a 2. Anybody willing to share? I told you all of my dirt.
I can say that at a 5, I'm a yeller.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not proud of it, but I'm a yeller.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I hear you. You know what? It's okay because we identify it. What is the first thing in my 5? I'm screaming. Yep, I'm yelling and I'm stomping. And ooh, it's not pretty, is it, Amanda?
Not so much, but I feel like I wouldn't have had to yell if you would have done what I asked, the first time.
Yes.
The first 10 times. I don't know. So we're getting better at language, planning time accordingly.
Yep. And Missy, what did she say, Sarah?
It looks like she says, I feel like I'm skipping step 3 to 4, and which I totally relate to, and I'm a yeller if I can't flee or get away from what's causing it, which
That fight, flight, and flee.
yep. And I was going to say, I think it's interesting. Sometimes I find that when I'm really, really angry, I kind of get more internal, and I'm not so much a yeller, but I get kind of like huffy and cold shouldery, and I'm just like, ugh, I don't even want to deal with it, rather than like confronting what's actually the problem. So I think it depends on the situation, but I can definitely see it happening both ways.
So you're not a fighter, but maybe you're a fleer or freeze, right? You can freeze. Freezing is going internal and doing nothing. I just noticed something else come up in the chat box. What was that?
Oh, this one says, just Missy saying, yep, that's how I work too, Sarah, putting silence. Yep. A lot of silence.
So what the key is working down here and saying, what do you look like at a 2? So you can bring yourself back down to a 1. What do you look like at a 3? So you can bring yourself down. What do you look like at a 4? And what do you look like at a 5? So that you can start to put some strategies in place around yourself, or perhaps other people in your environment can help you. So for instance, at a 1, what do? I do a relaxing calming stretches. I do 5 deep breaths. And the best was when my then 7-year-old daughter said, "Stop breathing," because she knew it was a strategy I was really trying hard to employ to get myself calm. But she, in all of her loveliness, because she's lovely, wanted to get the reaction she was used to getting. And so she would keep ramping it up. Can you believe a child doing that? Ramping it up to try to poke you? None of you have children like that, right? I see laughter. And when I started using strategies very purposefully and very big to show her what I was doing, she kind of got mad at first because I was changing the dance. But if I had just gone, it wasn't big enough to show her that I was trying to calm my body down. I needed to go big and show her what I was doing. And that's why I would do the and do it really big. I'm going to give you a little hint. It doesn't happen overnight, but I do distinctly remember the time she was 13 and on her bed talking with a friend, and the friend and her were arguing. And I heard her, as I walked by her door, go, and I went, yay! Now, my daughter took, a couple more years than I would have liked, but she got there. And if I hadn't put the time and the energy and the distinct patience into trying, she wouldn't have got there. And now at 26, it's amazing how quickly she'll kick in some of those strategies that that helped me, and she's found others that help her. At a 3 is when you remove yourself from the situation if you can, before you explode. So my family learned to say, "What can I do for you, Mom?" Or I learned to take a break, a brain break. So I would put myself in brain break. Back in the day, we called it timeout. Now we call it more brain break. I would put myself in a timeout or a brain break, and I would go into the only door that would lock in my house that I knew no one could get through, and that was the bathroom. And I would sit there breathing with my Diet Coke and trying to settle myself down, while my 4-year-old was on the outside of the door banging, "Mommy, let me in!" And I needed to find some other strategies to help me during my brain break so I could relax. So I did things like turning on the water for a little white noise. I did things like turning on the fan for a little more white noise. And I also, even back then it was an egg timer, but now any kind of a bell where I would say, when you hear the beep, I'll be back out. So I would let her know that I'm coming. I haven't gone forever, but you don't get me right now. Right now, mommy needs a brain break, time out, because mommy's not going to be any good when she's here screaming, right? Not going to be any good here. So remove myself from the situation. At a 4, that's genius. Well, I don't know about genius. It was kind of called survival.
I was going to say too, Lisa, I love that. I think that's such a good reminder of reminding ourselves that we are not functional and it's not going to be received well when we're both up in that state. And I think it's so hard to forget that in the moment, and or so easy to forget that in the moment. It's so hard to calm ourselves down. And so thank you for saying that. I think that kind of gives us permission to be like, no, it's okay to take a break, because nothing productive is going to happen.
Nothing productive is going to happen after this point. And I'm also teaching my children, nothing productive is going to happen. So mommy needs to take care of herself so we can come back and be at a place where I can actually be more helpful, productive. So yes. Now,
Amanda
if you,
Amanda just wrote, instead of putting kids in a timeout where they aren't receptive of learning anything from us, it's we that as adults need to take the break. So it is really brilliant.
yeah, it is. It's just a different way of thinking. But yes, absolutely. Thank you. If you have another adult in your home who isn't already at a 5 because of the frustration and is down here at a 1 or 2, sometimes that's the time when you say, tag, you're it, I'm taking a walk. And the agreement is, I get 5 minutes to walk around the house 10 times. I get 5 minutes to go read my book. It was People magazine for me. I get 5 minutes to do what I know is going to help bring me back down. And at that moment, when I ask for that, you have to have that adult in the house that's going to be responsive and step up and say, oh, this is one of those moments. Aha, we don't want mommy to go to a 5. I better step in and do what I can to help that happen. And they need to stay at their 1 or 2. So if you're fortunate enough to have somebody else in the house to help you out with that, that's when I would tag my husband and I would literally tap him on the head and say, I need 5. And that was his cue. I was going to leave because I'm a fleer. And I'm going to leave before I get to a 5. They learned to say, Mom, what's up? What can I get you? Give me a Diet Coke. They would offer to help and mean it. Anytime Keith Urban went on the radio, immediately I was fine. So give me a Keith Urban anywhere, I was good to go. We had something in our family called the kayak call. And if anybody would do the kayak call, it would make me laugh. And I would immediately be snapped back into my reality bubble and I would come down. Donut hole, powdered sugar donut holes worked really well too if they were available.
Lisa, before we go on, Missy just said in the chat that she has a question on this.
Sure.
Missy, you can certainly unmute yourself, or if you want to type it into the chat box too, whatever works for you. Oh, maybe she needs to step away for a second. I'll leave her a message in the chat box.
Okay. You also need to know how to recover once you've been at a 5. So you've got to think about at the 5. Oh, your mic isn't working. That's such a bummer. Go ahead and put it in the chat box. At the point where I am at a 5, what helps me keep safe is quiet, sometimes verbal, but mostly nonverbal reassurance that it'll be okay and that someone cares enough to stay next to me until I've re-entered the Earth's orbit. Even though I'm a fleer, if I am really, really mad and someone just sits down next to me and just breathes and doesn't say anything, it's amazing how grounding that is for me. That might not be what works for you, but that's what works for me. So you need to kind of think about what's going to help you when you're at a 5 what's going to help you start to come down this other side of the scale. So I've exploded. I've yelled, I've screamed, I've absolutely gone out of my mind. I've stomped, and I've probably thrown a thing or two and hopefully not broken anything. Now I'm ashamed and I feel horrible, and all of those things that we feel when we have totally lost our minds. But I am going to eventually come back down to a number one. And what kinds of things can people say and do as I'm coming back down? For me, if someone says when I'm down to a 4 and I'm starting to breathe a little bit softer, and maybe I can actually speak a word or two, if my husband says, go sew. Sewing is my creative outlet. You go sew. I'll take care of what needs to be done. You go sew. Or hands me a Diet Coke or anything carb or anything salt. But at this point, I don't like verbal fixing. And I don't know about you, but the partner I have in my home, who happens to be male, wants to fix everything. So I'm often at a 4 and he's saying, well, we should do blah, 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 blah. And Anna could have done blah, 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 blah. And he's already trying to fix. And it puts me right back up here. And I just want to scream because I haven't calmed down enough to problem solve. Problem solving and fixing things doesn't happen until we're down here back at a 1 or a 2. It just doesn't. We're still too filled with anxiety to be able to problem solve or learn or fix. And so it's really important here for me, for people to be quiet and know that I still need some time before I start to apologize for my outburst. I'm beginning to move more slowly again. I'm not as quick. I'm not stomping. I've taken the earbuds out of my ears so I can listen to you rather than Keith Urban. You know, this many years later, it's still Keith Urban does it for me. I don't know why. Is there music that does it for you? What music do you like, Sarah? Oh,
Sorry, I didn't hear my name. Anything like very chill, like Coldplay or like that's just the one that came to my head. But anything that's just kind of like calming and I don't know, makes me think of stuff I listened to like back in college, like pre-adulthood.
Pre-adulthood. And the important thing to know here, when I'm at that 4 or 3, Coldplay might do it for you. Coldplay might put me back up. Keith Urban might put you back up. It's a very personal thing. So don't assume that something you like is something your child, when we talk about your child here, or your husband, your spouse, your significant other, mother, father, anybody is going to like. This is very personal to you. When I'm down at a 2, now I'm ready to really feel remorseful, apologetic, I'm ashamed, but I'm able to verbalize. And this is the point in time when I'll probably say things like, how could I have handled this better? Like, what could I have done differently? And I'm actually ready to repair and reestablish my relationship. I'm talking hugs, taking some time whenever I can to kind of problem solve. Coming from a 3 to a 1 could happen in 5 minutes in someone's lives. For me, it takes a while. Sometimes it's a half an hour. Sometimes it's the next day. And the hard part is to give yourself grace. The explosion happened, and you don't have to fix it that same day, even though you think you might need to. Your child will remember the next day what happened at the 5. If they're older than 4 or 5, they're going to remember what happened. And you can talk about it the next day when you are fully here. One thing to keep in mind is this is also very biologically based. There's a hormone called cortisol. And when cortisol dumps into your brain when you're very, very stressed, and it kind of, for lack of a better word, numbs out your brain so you can't think clearly. It specifically numbs out your front problem solving, thinking, executive function, and it leaves this fight, flight, and flee perfectly intact. And so until that cortisol reabsorbs in your brain, you really can't think clearly. And that is why road rage happens. That is why once that cortisol absorbs and you're able to think more clearly, you're more calm. In that moment, in that heat, when you're up here at a 4 and a 5, is not when you want to try to teach something new, a strategy, a skill, or anything. When you are here, and especially not when your child is here. Sometimes it takes a while to get us back down to 1. The research that I've read most recently says it takes somewhere between 6 to 12 hours for cortisol to fully absorb in your brain. And it takes men longer, closer to the 8 to 12, than it does women. That's closer to the 6 to 8 hours to fully reabsorb, which is why we women are always in our right mind more quickly, right? Okay, no, I'm sorry. That's really not necessarily true. But cortisol does reabsorb at different rates. It doesn't mean we have to keep our kids constantly placated and down here at our 1 or a 2 and let them get away with everything, right? They don't get their way, but it's how we teach them the lesson we want them to learn and when we teach it that makes the difference. So that brings us to talking a little bit more about your keep in mind.
And Lisa, I have a quick question about, I noticed on the last page there was number 3 had apologize about your behavior. How important would you say is that acknowledgement and apology to your child, to your spouse, whoever it might be that witnessed the 5 explosion? How important is it to apologize?
For me personally, people know that was more of a like, I'm at a 3 and I'm calming down when I'm apologizing. So it's important not to really talk to me about fixing it until you hear that apology from me, because that's the way I process information. The question you're asking is how important is it for everyone to hear that apology? I think it's a great teaching tool to say, mommy goofed up. Like, mommy lost her mind, or I, your teacher, lost my mind, and I am sorry about that. That's the end statement. We really want to say, but if you would have done what I asked you to the first time instead of the 10th. Yeah, that doesn't work right now. Right now, it's just the apology. Down here, when we're both child and adult is down at a 1, we can talk about, when mom asks you or your teacher asks you to do something once or twice, you need to do it, or XYZ is going to happen, your consequence. And then the parenting thing is you got to follow through with it, right? Because that's the bummer. That's the hard part. But when you set up if this happens, then this happens, you can do that all at a 2. Oh, you chose to throw that toy. When we throw toys, what did we decide? Yeah, it gets put away, doesn't it? Yep, it gets put away. So this toy gets put away, but you can play with this toy now. And be very consistent. That toy goes away. This is what happens next. Or whatever the target behavior is that you're looking for. Have a, this is okay, but when this is okay, but when this happens, this is the consequence. Follow through and keep it at a nice, soft voice, nice, relaxed breathing, not yelling and screaming, because they're not learning anything either. Does that answer your question? Any other questions? I know Missy had a question, but her audio wasn't working. Did she ever get it typed or emailed to you, Sarah?
Not yet. I'll take a look at my email, though, just in case.
Okay. So the keep in mind that you got for an adult anxiety curve. We've kind of talked through it when we were talking through my anxiety, but there are big pieces and takeaways. And this is your adult curve, right? We need to control our own behavior and anxiety during crisis in order to keep our kids calm and to help diffuse other person's anxiety or dysregulation or anger, whatever you want to call it. Our instincts will tell you to engage in fight or flight or freeze. But you can do neither. You have to use silence and your own calming strategies to keep yourself here. When we're thinking about building a child's plan, these are the things I want you to think about, because next, when we actually do your child's plan, and you've got your paper and pencil handy, I want you to be thinking about this. At a 1, this is the foundation. This is where positive value relationships are built. This is where you teach skills needed to function successfully in challenging situations. You might be teaching that 5-point scale. You might be teaching deep breathing. A lot of you as parents might know of, and I know teachers know of, things that we can teach like yoga. And we have the visual skills. You can maybe teach them to chew on something when they're anxious. Or maybe they need to give a hug to an animal and give a deep hug, and that helps them. Maybe you're going to teach them how to do that deep breathing. These kinds of skills and strategies get taught when they're at a 1. Do you have resources on how to get these kinds of strategies? If you don't, no worries. I have them in the back of the PowerPoint, and I'll leave it up, and you can take a quick picture of your screen, because there are great sources on a site called Teacher Pay Teacher. You don't need to be a teacher to go on it. Just have to sign in. It's a free. And there are great strategies and great visuals for us to be able to teach kids the strategies that are going to work best for them. I have a little one who had articulation needs only. And this is not his picture, although these kids are great. These are kids off the internet, just a Google search. But when we did it, what we ended up doing with mom, and what I do with the families I serve, is we take pictures of what kids look like when they're frustrated, and then strategies, and have pictures of themselves doing the strategies that will help them stay calm. So that's where the teaching happens. At a 2, this is where your signs of early stress need to be recognized, and you get to be the detective on how your child looks. Just like here, taking a look inward, what do you look like? You're going to say, what does your child or your target student, or if, I don't know, do all of you have the name of someone you're thinking about that you really want information about? Write that person down. I'll use Anna, because she's my lovely daughter. What does Anna look like when she's at these levels? And what do I need to do to keep myself calm? But then also, what can she do? What are her strategies that will help her keep calm as well? This is number 2, is when you're at the best time to refocus the person's attention and take the stress away as much as you possibly can, because they're already starting to show you their behavior is starting to ramp up, or their anxiety or their anger. 3 almost always, to me, and I heard someone say earlier, I feel like I skipped 2, 3, and 4. I go from a 1 to a 5. You don't. It seems like it. But when they're at a 3 and this could go sideways, that's when you try to remove the situation. You remove them from the situation, and quietly and calmly distract and replace an activity if you can, or you remove them from the situation. F3 is when I would take my daughter out of the grocery store. I knew it was ramping up. I had a full cartload of groceries, and I wanted nothing more than to get home. And she was starting to ramp up. One too many times I waited till she was at a 5, and we all know what that looks like and feels like as a parent, as you're hauling your child screaming out of the building, and you're thinking everyone's looking at you like you're the worst horrible mother in the world, and you're not. But you didn't quite intervene at that 3, that's when you pull your cart up to the clerk, and they all know this. Every single grocery store clerk knows this. And you say, my child and I need to leave now. Thank you. And magically, that cart gets all put away wherever it goes. If you say to that clerk, I will be back in an hour to get it, they will put it in the refrigerator compartment. And so when you come back to get it, you just say, I'm back to get my grocery cart, and voila, it's there. But you can leave, take your child home, have someone else care for that child for a little bit while you go back, or the next day you have to go shopping, which is a bummer. Either way, you've avoided the meltdown if you can leave the event at that moment. Once we've ramped up, then we're kicking and screaming out that door. And my daughter would always say, no, I don't want to go. And I'm like, sorry. And we would just quietly leave. Not easy to do, though. Has anyone else had a crying child at a grocery store? Yeah. Target.
At Target, yeah. I was just thinking about this. I just read online on Twitter, a dad was like, yeah, this happened at Target. And as he was leaving, his child started screaming, "You're not my dad." And he was like, oh gosh. So I just thought, oh no, that would be something else if that happened. So I couldn't help but laugh when I heard that.
And when my daughter said that to me, "You're not my mom." And I said, "Today I wish I wasn't." To the lady that walked by and looked at me like, "Really?" I said, "Yes, and today I wish I wasn't." Luckily, nobody came after me with the police looking for me to say, "Are you abducting this child?" But yeah, some days you just wish you weren't. A 4, when your child's at a 4, this is not the time to ask that child to make a choice. Do you want to go home? Do you want me to put this toy away? No, because they can't think clearly. The cortisol are already dumping. They don't get to make choices. They got to make a choice down here at a 2 and maybe at a 3, but at 4, no more choices. 4 is where you model those strategies that you've taught back here at number 1, where that you determine has worked for your child. And for my daughter, it was giving big hugs to her stuffed animal. Well, that required me having that stuffed animal with us everywhere we went. And guess what? I ended up getting 3. So I could have one at the house, one in the car, and a spare in the trunk, because I knew that that was what was going to work. And so I had them, and I was okay with that. What you need, if it works, you know it works. But number 5, nothing really works when you're at a 5 except safety, right? If they are running in the parking lot and screaming and they're at their peak of their anxiety, you are going to run after them and grab them, and you're going to scream at them and you're going to say stop. But there's no teaching that's going to happen here. And it looks very different for different people. Crying, banging your head, throwing things, hitting, swearing. I call it dropping and flopping. My daughter was a great dead fish. Do you have dead fish sometimes too? Drop and flop. And it got to a point where I couldn't pick her up. So I would just stand there and hold her by the wrist, not by the hand, because she hated that. Hold her by the wrist so she wouldn't leave and she'd know I was there. And I would just breathe until she told me to stop breathing. But let her know, we're not going anywhere, and I'm not picking you up because you're too heavy, but we're stuck here for a little bit, as long as it was in a safe place. It's not the time to reason with them. It's not to try to get them to problem solve. No learning is going to occur. Just sit quietly with the person, or give yourself a brain break. Give them a brain break, depending on where you're at. Redirection, if you try to redirect them too quickly when they're calming down, they're going to throw toys and they're going to return to hitting and crying and biting and screaming and kicking and all of that behavior that they were giving you. So you know immediately if you've misjudged that you think they're down here and you can talk to them and they're not, and they ramp right back up. We didn't sit quietly with them and just chill with them long enough for that cortisol to reabsorb, for them to be more in their right minds. When they're at a 3, you can encourage them and support them if possible, but don't try to discuss the event yet. Your child is not capable of rational thought yet. Your partner is not capable of rational thought yet. I was thinking, just giggling and laughing, because my husband tried to engage me in a conversation and I was so angry. And then he thought I was down here because I was like acting better. And then I'm like, yeah, no, I'm not rational yet. It's just not okay. We can't talk about that event yet. We can talk about other things, but not that trigger event just yet. At a 2, that's when you use calm redirection, whatever you figured out has worked for your child best, and then you're back where you can teach. What questions do you have about what your job is and kind of what the thought process is behind this tool? And it is just one tool of many, but I think it's a tool that a lot of people aren't aware of or really don't think about a lot.
I just want to pipe in and say that it's about 7:18 right now, Lisa, just so you know how that's the time.
Any questions?
I have a question. My boy, my oldest, certainly follows this curve. I mean, it's like you were writing it about him. One thing I feel like I see with him is that he sort of almost has a happiness curve that goes parallel with this. And I get nervous when he gets really happy and excited, because it seems like then so if he's like at a 4 of happiness and something goes wrong, he goes directly to the 4 on the anxiety curve. And I don't get that 1 to 3 because he's already ramped himself up, but in a different emotion.
Because he's ramped up with that excitement, it's still ramped up.
Yeah. And if something goes wrong, then it's like, oh my gosh, it's even worse than, anything. So I find myself trying to calm him when he's happy, which I don't think he appreciates very much, because I just anticipate that if something goes wrong, we're going to end up, we're jumping immediately to a 5 because we were excited and in a good way, but then it turns very wrong.
How old is your son?
He's now 10.
He's 10. So he is able very much at his age to join you in this down here teaching strategies of how to manage and regulate our emotions, and maybe helping him find things that when he is starting to get excited or angry, either way, either extreme motion, to kind of bring him back down for learning. And you can talk with him a little bit about, we learn best when our body and our minds are calm. And it's okay to be excited and happy. It's okay to be mad. It's okay to be angry. But what can we do when we're up here and we can't learn anymore? When it, like, the emotion has carried us away and we can't experience and learn what we want to learn from that moment. What do we do to just settle our body and our minds a little bit so we can gain more from that experience and learn more during that experience? So that might be a way of thinking about it, because when you're really, really excited and happy, you can also just take a minute to go, wow, this is really cool. But just even one deep breath kind of starts to bring you down. Or for me, Lynn, one sip of Coke through a straw. Whether I'm happy or whether I'm angry. You're right, because those emotions are still like high, right? It's a good thought. Does that help? Yeah, and because you have the adult knowledge of knowing that regardless if it's happy or angry, this could happen very quickly. What strategies can we have so we can start using them proactively? Does everybody need a 2-second stretch break? Oh, silly.
Could I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Sorry, my name is Nadia. I just want to back up. I'm not able, for whatever technical reason, to get the PowerPoint on the Google Meet, but you had mentioned a resource called for different strategies for kids to kind of come back down. It was like a website, I think.
Yep, Teacher Pay Teacher.
Teacher Pay Teacher.
Teacher Pay Teacher. It's a website, and I have 2 particular vendors I really like. They both have what I call emotional regulation kinds of materials, and that's what when I go into Teacher Pay Teacher, I will type in the word regulation, or I'll type in the word calming. And Pocket of Preschool is one of the ones that I really like. Pocket of Preschool. And the other one that I really like is Autism Little Learners. One thing we know about kids on the autism spectrum is they have big emotions. Those strategies work for all of our kids, whether they have developmental delays or needs or not. They work beautifully for all children. And so the resources that I tend to use for my typical learners and my learners who are having challenges are from Pocket of Preschool and Autism Little Learners.
And then my other question is I have a 2.5-year-old and a 10-month-old, so it's kind of early, but how many times do you really have to repeat with 2 years old, like until they kind of latch on to a coping strategy?
A lot.
A lot, yeah. Hundreds.
A lot. You know, they say adults take 21 days to make a habit, and we've got all of our frontal cortex working So I say sometimes it takes 3 to 6 months and sometimes longer. Remember, I didn't know about any of these strategies until my daughter was 4.5.
Mm-hmm.
And she didn't really start using them until she was 7 or 8 and really embraced them by the time she was 13. She had just graduated magna cum laude with a finance degree. She has an organic chemistry degree. You know, she's a functioning, beautiful young woman with all the future in the world. But boy, was she a challenge when she was a baby. And it was a lot of work. I had my firstborn, and he was easy. I think he would have learned these strategies like lickety split in a year or two. But maybe not. I think his temperament was just different. You know, our children's temperament is our children's temperament. So, yeah.
Congratulations with your kids, by the way.
Oh, well, you know, they're still works in progress, trust me. But I just really want to share that because it doesn't happen overnight. And I work exclusively with birth to age 3. And so these strategies that I'm using and I teach, multiple months of repetition and consistency. But you got to figure out 1 or 2 things that work and go with it and see what you can do. For my littles, I frequently go with just breathing. Do you know those balls that kind of are I wanted to find mine, but I couldn't. They kind of scrunch down and then they come out. Are they called geospheres, Lynn? I think they are geospheres.
Oh, yeah.
And so I frequently will buy one, and when I breathe, instead of going, I will go with a geosphere. And you can
That's a
teach
good
a
tip
3-year-old
because
to breathe it, right? But it's visual, it's tactile, as long as they don't pinch their little fingers in them. So, you know, something very, very physical.
We also use pinwheels in some of our classrooms. Take a deep breath and then blow really hard so the pinwheel spins faster.
Awesome.
And yeah, that might be another thing too. If you you can find a pack of those on Amazon pretty easily too. So
dollar store. If you can stand it, those long fluty whistles are fun too. But you go, or the ones that unroll. 2-year-olds aren't really good at blowing those party things that blow out. They're closer to 3 and they can really blow them out easily.
and
sure,
I was going to
I was just saying we have been trying to do like songs like Daniel Tiger and like trying to teach her to breathe, but it just hasn't been working out. But thanks for the items might help.
Yeah, I think if you can keep it to an item, it was really helpful. And I think somebody else just posted something in the chat that looked good.
Yeah, Missy just said, and Amanda, we'll get to your question too, sorry, but Missy said we use stretchy things, called monkeys. They're on Amazon. I was going to say I would be happy to email out all the links that Lisa's mentioning. So like the Pocket of Preschool, Teacher Pay Teachers. I can do some Googling for some of these Amazon ideas as well. And I'll send that out to everyone that's attending so you guys can find some of those links too.
Yeah. You said there was another question, Sarah?
Yes. Yes. Amanda had asked in the chat box. So she said, this feels silly to ask when we've been parents for 8.5 years, but no silly questions, Amanda. What if the anxiety producing event is our almost 3-year-old not getting his way? Anything from not getting to sit on the countertop to pulling the dog's tail to taking a bite out of every apple out of the fruit bowl, et cetera, et cetera. Love those examples.
It's hard being a parent, isn't it? Having to set boundaries and deciding what is going to be okay and tolerated in your house and acceptable and what is not. But guess what? You as the calm 1 to 2 adult get to make those decisions and have the consequences. And as long as it's delivered calmly, the learning can still continue. So if up on the counter is not okay with you, it's a quick bring down and distract. Now, if he's 8 years old, distraction is a little different. If he's a 2-year-old, distraction is another toy or whatever, or being removed from the situation and going to another room. You get to decide, and that's the exciting thing. It's a little bit of an aside to the curve that we're talking about, but just a visual I have in my head is basket A are always no's. And the always knows are you may not run into the road, you may not touch the hot oven, you may not always 100% no, I'm not going to negotiate. And then there's the always yeses basket. So we've got A and C, and the yes basket is, yes, you may have a piece of fruit before lunch, or yes, you may have this toy, or yes, you may have access to these toys all the time. And then the murky work is what's in this basket B, and how do we manage B? Like today, I'm okay with you being on the counter, but tomorrow I won't be. So we got to decide as an adult what's okay some days and not other days in that basket B are a little trickier to manage, right? So no for a 2-year-old, no for a 3-year-old. It's their God-given right to defy that because they're exerting their independence and they need to be able to know what that boundary is. But if we can keep calm and deliver the no, and it's this instead and distract, it's a hard, tiring job though, isn't it? Does that make sense, or does that help at all? Or no? Anybody else have ideas? All right. So I'm going to introduce you to Jay. Again, like I said, this is not his picture. Oops. Where did it go? There it is. And this is Jay's parents' anxiety curve for him. I'm giving you it as an example only because different examples are helpful for learning processes. So, oh dear, that does not look good, does it? What he looks like when he's smiling and talkative with a normal volume. He seeks out affection, kisses, hugs. He's playful, engaging, interactive. He can concentrate, does multiple tasks. He's agreeable. He listens. He's calm. No body tension. That's what parents decided he looked like at a 1. At a 2, they said heightened signs of anxiety where laughing becomes more silly, for lack of a better term. It's like almost what Lynn was talking about, a little that emotional anxiety, kind of angsty kind of laughter. He's playful, but a bit more hyper. His play is more possessive, more mine starts to be said. His voice is louder, but not disruptive. He's receptive to affection, but not necessarily seeking it out. However, would still be able to focus and listen to direction, but can be more distracted by outside noises, stimuli, siblings. His body is tense, and his arms or legs might be what mom would say just closer to his trunk. He's not so free and floppy. He's starting to kind of tighten up a little bit. She noticed when he was a 3, let's see if I can get this. Is there a visual of his graph? I don't see it. No,
Yeah,
just in my PowerPoint, but I certainly can share the PowerPoint at the end, and Sarah can send it out.
yeah, on this actual slides, we're not, I don't know if it didn't advance on our end, but we're stuck on the view of just him smiling. So I don't know if you might have to refresh your PowerPoint or something on your end because it looks like it might be technology. Maybe it got stuck.
Maybe it got stuck. Well, let me just say, I'll read it through a little bit. I tried to link this in from her, an email I got, and I didn't actually put it into the PowerPoint because I didn't have time. So I will send it into the PowerPoint and send
No
it
worries. That's okay. We just want to make sure we're missing anything.
Well, you are missing it, but that's okay. You get to hear me instead. Mom says at a 3, he's one word. He's loud. He's got a tense body. His hands are clenched. He's against his body. He's breathing is ragged. He increases. And if he's given a desired item or a toy, he might calm down, but he quickly is going to escalate to a 4. At a 4, he's fight and flight. And he is set in. He's no longer talking. He's vocalizing and he's screaming, and it's the only way he's communicating is through one-word answers, hyperventilating, starting to breathe really fast, his body tenses, his fists are clenched, he's looking for objects to throw, and he starts to run around in circles, he's crying, and she notices that he starts to sweat and that he avoids eye contact. That's him at a 4. And at a 5, she had said, he's nonverbal. He's screaming, he's hitting, he's biting, he's kicking, whatever is closest to him. He's throwing whatever he can at whomever is closest to him, including their infant baby. Needs to be restrained or confined to avoid hurting himself or someone around him. He'll struggle to get free if he's held, so you can't really touch him. He's totally irrational, and he comes across as completely offline, checked out, blind rage. Movements are jerky. His breathing is rapid. He actually may vomit from crying and screaming, and he'll no longer make any eye contact whatsoever. So this mom really did, I think, a nice job of looking at all of his behaviors and really pinpointing what he looks like at a 1, 2, 3, 4, and a 5. And on the other side, at a 4, he starts to stop screaming a little bit. His volume's decreased. His sweat starts to dry. I thought that was really interesting that she could really watch his body reactions, his biological reaction. His breathing and gasps, his fists start to unclench. He responds to simple questions with one-word answers. He might make some eye contact. He might hug you, but he's no longer hitting or throwing things. When he gets to a 3, he now will look at her again, seeks affirmation, seeks some love and affection. He's much more willing to hug and kiss, apologize. He starts using his words more, 2-word combinations instead of being nonverbal. His volume of his voice starts to normalize. If mom offers him a tool from the toolkit of strategies, he'll actually take it. Most likely, he really liked deep pressure, so we did J sandwiches, which is taking a pillow and putting it on top of your child while they're laying down, and putting another pillow and another pillow and another pillow, and a deep hug and an achu, so the pillow releases. And so he really liked that deep pressure in order to calm his body. At a 2, the body tension was totally gone. Communication was returned. He followed directions, picked up his toys. He was eager to do any of the strategies that they had already taught, like seeking, like the sandwich, the J sandwich, and chewing on his toys that were for chewing. He too, I don't know, maybe it's just because it's like through process of suggestion, but he liked to drink through a straw, but it was those little tiny straws from the Capri Suns, the little tiny ones. Those are really hard to drink from. He really liked those. And then he was back to his normal routine. So that's kind of what he looked like when he was on his curve. What does your child look like? I really want you to think about it, because this is the heart of getting at now how to avoid your child getting up to a 5. What do they look like? Write down on your paper or on your note or in your Google Drive, on your notepad. What do they look like at a 1? What do they look like at a 5? And try to identify your task for the next week or 2 is to see what do they look at when they're like a 2 or a 3 or a 4. Because believe it or not, they don't skip it. Even my daughter, who could honestly go from 0 to 60 in 2 seconds, once I knew what the triggers were, which, like the person who said, what about when no is the trigger? No is always a trigger for her, but having the not this is what we're going to do instead, that kind of a choice kind of helped. But there are behaviors that happen here that lead us to know that they're going to go here. That's the trick. Anybody have any specific ideas or thoughts on their child right now, on what they look like? It's okay if you don't want to share, but I want you to write them down, because that's the magic. Then you can start to plot it into your student curve. I gave you that student curve as well, so that you can start to think about what is a typical day, what are triggers, and what do I need to teach to help for relaxation and calming. I remove from the situation, I redirect if possible, but really these are not calming strategies, aren't easy here. We got to make them feel safe at 5. and wait till they're back down to a 2 or a 1 before that teaching can happen. I think so often as a parent and as an educator, although I have to say, I think I'm a much more, well, my parents and my family would say I am definitely a more patient professional than I am a parent. So waiting for them to go through that 4 to the 3 before they get to a 2 and a 1 to teach is easier for me professionally than it ever was as a mom. Oh, that's an interesting observation. Go ahead and share that, Sarah.
Yeah, Gina says, I feel like my 4-year-old starts to quietly pick on his 2-year-old brother when he is at level 2. And
what can you do? Yeah, that's interesting. What do you think might help that? If you see that behavior where he's starting to quietly pick on his sibling, what do you think might help redirect him to get him back down versus having him crank up to the 3 or the 4? Some of the things go ahead, redirect to something else that would be fun to play. Yep. Absolutely, Gina. Because, and the key is, oh, this is such an important key. When you see him picking on his sibling, my first response as a parent is stop picking on Cameron. But that's already putting me up at a 3. Right? Because I'm starting to join the chaos because I'm mad that you're picking on your sibling. It's wiser of me if I can keep myself down here at a 1 or a 2 and just simply say, oh, I wonder if you'd rather play with this. I wonder if this might be something. Go ahead and read that response for me, Sarah.
Yeah. Another comment. We separate our kids when we see that, the picking on each other, but it's not always easy, especially during our distance learning when they really only have each other. Yes, very tough this year.
Very tough this year. Very tough. And again, when you're separating your kids, I don't know about you, but I know about me when I had young children, it wasn't always the, wow, I wonder if you might want to do this instead. It was a go to your room or go to the living room. You're picking on your sister. Stop it. And I was bringing myself up to a 3 when I was trying to mitigate it. So I got to stay down here at a 1 or a 2 and say, looks to me like you're looking for something to play with.
And there's a mutual discussion here that it always seems to happen when you're in the middle of something, whether it's making dinner or trying to get something done, and suddenly the kids decide this is a great opportunity to start picking on each other and start building up those levels to 2 to 3.
Raw chicken hands. Absolutely. And it's interesting that you say that, because either we spend time meeting our children's emotional needs by filling their cup, or we spend the time dealing with the behaviors that are caused from those unmet needs. Either way, we're going to spend the time. So the love or the strategies of the attention that we give them in the middle of our raw chicken hands to try to redirect, that 20 seconds that it's going to take to just put your hands down and redirect calmly at a 1 or a 2, you've spent 20 seconds to avoid a 3 or a 4 or a 5 behavior where you're going to spend 20 minutes trying to repair the damage. So you're going to spend the time. How much time do you want to spend, and when do you want to spend it? It's not always convenient, though. And we're not superhuman. We're all human. So we're not going to be perfect at this every time. There are still times when I would scream and yell and stomp and walk around the block. It became less, but it still happens because we're human. I saw a bunch of things flying through the chat box, Sarah.
Yes. We were just wondering if you could say that part again, just so some families want to jot that down. If you could just read that quote again.
Yeah. Either we spend time meeting children's emotional needs by filling their cup with love, or what I would call strategies and attention, or we spend time dealing with the behaviors caused from their unmet needs. Either way, we spend the time. parenting is the hardest job you will ever love. It is a hard, hard job. And we need to give ourselves a lot of grace, especially, like you say, Sarah, in the last year with the pandemic. Craziness. Just very hard, all that time together. As we're kind of wrapping up, another quote that I really like to think about, I recently have come to the conclusion that the opposite of anxiety is not calm. Even though we just spent the last hour and a half talking about calm, it's actually trust. The ability to ward off the feelings of impending misfortune, betrayal, or personal slight, and believe that everything really will be okay. And that's what our kids need from us. When they're starting to ramp up, they need to know that they can trust us to bring them down out of their chaos. That opposite of anxiety is not calm, it's trust. The ability to ward off those feelings of impending misfortune, betrayal, or personal slight, and believe that everything really will be okay. Because it will be. Wrapping up, any other questions, thoughts? I will share my PowerPoint and I'll do a better job at seeing if I can get that one child's anxiety curve in there for your ideas. But really, I want you to challenge yourself to think about, what does your child look like, or your student look like, when they're at a 2, 3, and a 4? Because we know 1 and we know 5.
We have a comment here. Sometimes it feels hopeless to try to teach kids tools to cope if they're never applied or taught at home. That's a really good question too, of how do we make those connections to help support that when it might look really different at home versus at school?
That is a very good question. Do you have thoughts about that, Sarah? Lynn, or anyone else?
Yeah. Well, I can, and it looks like someone else just asked, would love to learn what tools are taught at school. I know at least at Centennial, in our preschool and ECFE programs, we do a lot with something called the pyramid model, which is a framework for social emotional regulation and challenging behaviors. And a lot of what, Lisa, you talked about tonight of the strategies and really tapping into what can we teach our kids to sort of teach themselves and use themselves. A tool might be deep breathing. It might be to go get like a fidget or something to play with to get kind of that, antsiness out. It might be to go get a teacher to help solve a problem. It might be to use your words and say, stop, I don't like that. Or just all those different tools that we hope that kids are using to problem solve. But it is hard. I would agree that it is challenging when we can send those resources home, and sometimes whether it's just parents not knowing what those resources are, or not being confident in their abilities to do it, or
it's just another handout coming home, right? And I don't know what to do with it.
Yeah,
right?
Not having time. Like, we all know we're so busy. It's like, I don't have time to read this article from the teacher about pyramid model. Like, oh my gosh. So we personally are looking for ways to help make that transition a little bit more smoothly too, because we know that it can just be one more thing to have to do at home. And so as administrators, it is helpful for us to hear from parents about what is helpful and what are ways that we can help ease that transition from home to school, or things that work at home that we can try at school too, because we know that is also
it's that homeschool bridge between, and like Gina said, she'd love to know what's being taught at school. And so, Gina, I would empower you to say, tomorrow talk with your teacher and say, what strategies are you teaching? Because I want to use them at home too. And I'm sure they'll be happy to. I know I often send things back. I will actually print them, send them, laminate them, and send them out, because I want to make sure we found out that this strategy really works. And your child really likes it when they just simply rub their legs during group time, because group time is hard and you're antsy. And so we've taught the kids to just rub their legs real slow and deep. That's one strategy that seems to really work. And hey, I bet you could do that in the car seat. I bet you could do that at the kitchen table. I bet you could do that when they're in the shopping cart at Target. Where else could we rub those legs to just kind of do it proactively when my child is at a 1 and teach it, so that they then will start to use it when I say, oh, and I start rubbing my legs and they're at a 2, they're going to see that and start doing it to help calm themselves too.
And I will second what Lisa said about teachers pay teachers. We use that all the time at school. And like Lisa said, there's a ton of free things on there. And a lot of them are editable and adaptable. So they might give you like a template and you can add in your own words, or, you know, there's some that have like different pictures and different cartoons. And so it's a really great way to search for things that work well for your particular family and situation.
Reaching out to your teacher and your teacher's reaching back to the parents to see what works. Like, I would have never known, but I got an email today from a family who said this is the only thing that works at home. And I got the picture, and he is piled on with 6 different blankets. He has something in his mouth to suck on. It's a little toy, not a Nook, but a little toy. And he has a hat on so he doesn't see light. She said, this is what we have to do to calm him down. And I said, praise you for figuring it out. Now you know the tool to use. And we're going to use that tool when he's here, so he doesn't have to go here and then need it to calm down. We're going to start using that tool. You've just identified like what he needs. Let's work on different ways to do it. So.
Yeah, and I'll just second that as well. I know something that surprised me about working in this age group, and something that I'm noticing a lot in like my own family with my niece and nephew, is that sensory. I feel like so many kids really benefit from that sensory, whether it's, the weighted blankets or a little neck massage, or sucking on something, like you can get like chewy sticks on Amazon that you can just sit and chew on, sucking on your straw, whether it's Diet Coke or whatever. Hopefully not Diet Coke for the little ones, but that'll definitely get you up to a 5. But yeah, I think what I'm noticing more and more is and I'm kind of surprised that so many kids have some sensory needs. And so you might not think that your own kids or your own students need that, but it's worth a try, because then you might be like, a weighted blanket really does help. And now they're so common and easy to find. I think Target sells, kid weighted blankets.
So they do, and so does Walmart.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So just something to think about too. I think that's an area that, it might be an unfamiliar territory for some parents to be like, really sensory stuff, but it could be. So,
were there other questions that came through the chat, or another caller?
Sorry. Could I ask you, how do you spell the pyramid model? How do you spell that?
Oh yeah. Yep. So pyramid. So like pyramid, Egypt pyramid. So oh my gosh. See if I can spell it out loud. PYRAMID. MODEL. And I can add that. I know it's more of a school resource, but they do have a great website with some other resources as well. So I can send that out in that email as well, with like the recording and some other resources. I'll make a note to send out that website that has some good parent resources as well.
And as speaking as because I'm just a parent on this end, I'm not a teacher or anything, but
did you just use a 4-letter word, just?
Oh,
don't use that 4-letter word, just. You are a parent. You are a parent. Yes. Anyway,
but
sorry.
No, it's okay. I don't know, like, before I had kids, I guess I didn't really understand how important like emotional intelligence and like that type of learning was until I had kids. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, this is, and I think our culture right now is kind of bringing this forward more than it did like even 10 years ago or something. So I think that, because I think you guys were talking about trying to engage families and like why I like trying to get them to do stuff at home and stuff like that. Like even like highlighting like, oh, because I think I heard something a week ago or so, like that higher emotional intelligence will actually cause you to be happier and more successful in life versus like IQ and like that type of thing.
Absolutely. Yes.
And I don't know what study that is, but like bringing some of that evidence base like forward in a way that's palatable and consumable by a lay, like different education levels of parents. So. Good
point. Yes, absolutely. They do say it's your emotional intelligence that keeps you happy and engaged in life.
And I do have a resource I can share as well in that email about emotional intelligence. I think it's actually one of the websites you mentioned earlier, Lisa, but I can throw that link in there too for some other reading when you have a few minutes about emotional intelligence and how to support that within yourself and with your kids too.
Well, I think the best way to enjoy life and have a high emotional IQ is to laugh. So I have another video about children laughing to send us on our way out the door. Wouldn't it be lovely if ripped paper, moving your arm, all of this could just elicit the kind of joy that it does here? They're moving paper. And over he goes. Over he goes. Oh, that is so fun. I think babies are the best way to start humans.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much, Lisa. My cheeks hurt from laughing at those videos. I'm going to go YouTube some more compilations so I could get some more laughs tonight. Anyone else have any last minute questions or thoughts or comments? I know there's some beautiful comments in the chat box just thanking Lisa for your amazing work. And we are so thankful to have you here at Centennial with us. We really, I work with Lisa every day, see you, and it just brings a smile to my face working with you because you are so talented. So thank you for sharing your insights.
Well, it's a hard job being a parent, but it's also a wonderfully rewarding being a teacher and a parent. So.
Thank you. Well, if we can stay on for another minute here if anyone has any more one-on-one questions or anything like that. But otherwise, thank you all so much for taking the time to join us. We are so appreciative of you, taking time out of your busy lives to join us for some great conversations. So hopefully everyone has a good evening and stays warm. And I will send out that email probably tomorrow morning to get you those resources. So you can keep an eye out for that. Sounds good. Thanks, everybody.